Hello, world. It is time again for your favorite podcast and mine, Viva la Renaissance. I mean, I know we've only just started, but I don't think it's too soon for you to declare this as your favorite podcast because I know it's mine and I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I know. But the reason Viva la Renaissance is my favorite is because I actually see the influence of these artists and their stories on my life almost immediately. I'm really impacted by everything that is being shared on here. It's really inspiring. Every single interview has had like these ripple effects of inspiration in my life, and it's just really made me really confident to jump into my art with both feet even more than I was before. And I hope these stories are inspiring you in similar ways too. I'd love to hear about it. If you ever want to drop me a line on vivalarenaissance.net on the contact page, I would love to hear how this podcast relationship is going for you and what I can do to make it even better. So this is just a few days after Halloween, and we had a big party and show here in the downtown loft that I live in, and it was ridiculously fun. And I have a new collaborator who has been kind of the spark that I've been waiting for to light an epic creative fire. And I guess the show was sort of our first project together, and it was really, really fun. He's an actor, singer, cabaret sensation who is going to be a guest soon. So I'll leave that as a surprise. But the show had so many great moments, and the act that I've been developing mostly as a way to teach for my online cabaret act development class. Talked about it last episode too. Wound up being about my divorce and having a marionette in it and all these things, but it just went so good. It was really satisfying. I made this long froofy dress into a little puppet stage and cinched the back up like an Austrian curtain, and then little marionette came out and did a little dance with a cigarette, and then he took his final bow and disappeared, and then I smoked and did all kinds of acrobatic tricks on a chair. I felt very, very risque to be smoking these days. I don't actually smoke, but on stage smoking I do find always entertaining. But yeah, it felt like I was really getting away with something, which, is really fun. And I also debuted another act with two other great collaborators who are involved. One's a clown and one is an acrobat. And we did an act that I had made costumes for and been incubating since last spring, and it's called Dance of the Devil's Algorithms. And it's about these two super cute devils who corrupt an innocent victim with a cell phone. And then my new co-conspirator, we'll call him, did an a cappella version of Truth Hurts while I revealed and concealed his striptease with a feather fan dance around him. And it was all just totally amazing. I wish we had had more rehearsal, of course, but I'm really happy just with how it's coming together. And we just kind of threw it all out there and it worked. And it was really good stuff. And then next weekend, I'm heading out to Wonder Valley in the desert with one of my nearest and dearest friends, Tanya Gagne, who I'm also going to have to ask to be on this show soon. But she's putting together a show called the Desert Fox Cabaret on Saturday, November 9th, which happens to be my birthday. So how fun is that? Fun things are happening, people. So our reading this week is from Brain Pickings, which is this literary newsletter written by a woman named Maria Popova, who lives in New York. And she summarizes books and poems and literary letters, and just the way that she describes them are in themselves poetic. And she published 2 books herself this past year and has been doing the newsletter for 13 years. And last week she sent out 13 lessons she's learned from doing brain pickings for these 13 years. It's like 1 lesson per year. And I really just loved them. And I found myself reading them a couple times throughout the week. I just thought they were really great. And she has this aching bohemian poet's gravitas and kind of this like really like humble way of embracing life's imperfections and agonies. It's just so good. So This is from Maria Popova's 13th anniversary of the Brain Pickings newsletter. 1. Allow yourself the uncomfortable luxury of changing your mind. Cultivate that capacity for negative capability. We live in a culture where one of the greatest social disgraces is not having an opinion. So we often form our quote unquote opinions based on superficial impressions or the borrowed ideas of others without investing the time and thought that cultivating true conviction necessitates. We then go around asserting these donned opinions and clinging to them as anchors to describe our own reality. It's enormously disorienting to simply say, I don't know, but it's infinitely more rewarding to understand than to be right, even if that means changing your mind about a topic, an ideology, or above all, yourself. 2. Do nothing for prestige or status or money or approval alone. As Paul Graham observed, prestige is like a powerful magnet that warps even your beliefs about what you enjoy. It causes you to work not on what you like, but what you'd like to like. Those extrinsic motivators are fine and can feel life-affirming in the moment, but they ultimately don't make it thrilling to get up in the morning and gratifying to go to sleep at night. And in fact, they can often distract and detract from the things that do offer those deeper rewards. 5. When people tell you who they are, as Maya Angelou famously advised, believe them. Just as important, however, when people try to tell you who you are, don't believe them. You are the only custodian of your own integrity. I love that line. And the assumptions made by those that misunderstand who you are and what you stand for reveal a great deal about them and absolutely nothing about you. 6. Presence is far more intricate and rewarding in art than productivity. Ours is a culture that measures our worth as human beings by our efficiency, our earnings, our ability to perform this or that. The cult of productivity has its place, but worshiping at its altar daily robs us of the very capacity for joy and wonder that make life worth living for. As Annie Dillard memorably put it, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. 7. Expect anything worthwhile to take a long time. This is borrowed from the wise and wonderful Debbie Millman, for it's hard to better capture something so fundamental that yet so impatiently overlooked in our culture of immediacy. The myth of the overnight success is just that, a myth, as well as a reminder that our present definition of success needs serious retuning. As I've reflected elsewhere, the flower doesn't go from bud to blossom in one sprightly burst, and yet as a culture, we're disinterested in the tedium of the blossoming. But that's where all the real magic unfolds, in the making of one's character and destiny. 8. Seek out what magnifies your spirit. Patti Smith, in discussing William Blake and her creative influences, talks about writers and artists who magnified her spirit. It's a beautiful phrase and a beautiful notion. Who are the people, ideas, and books that magnify your spirit? Find them, hold on to them, and visit them often. Use them not only as a remedy when spiritual malaise has infected your vitality, but as a vaccine administered while you are healthy to protect your radiance. 10. Don't just resist cynicism, fight it actively. Fight it in yourself, for this ungainly beast lies dormant in each of us, and counter it in those you love and engage with by modeling its opposite. Cynicism often masquerades as nobler faculties and dispositions, but it is categorically inferior. Unlike that great Rilkean life-expanding doubt, it is a contracting force. Unlike critical thinking, that pillar of reason and necessary counterpart to hope, it is inherently uncreative, unconstructive, and spiritually corrosive. Life, like the universe itself, tolerates no stasis. In the absence of growth, decay usurps the order. Like all forms of destruction, cynicism is infinitely easier and lazier than construction. There is nothing more difficult, yet more gratifying in our society than living with sincerity and acting from a place of large-hearted, constructive, rational faith in the human spirit, continually bending toward growth and betterment. This remains the most potent antidote to cynicism. Today especially, it is an act of courage and resistance. And there are 3 new editions which refine some of the subtler ideas and ideals contemplated above. 11, a reflection originally offered on the cusp of year 11 by way of a wonderful poem about pi. Question your maps and models of the universe, both inner and outer, and continually test them against the raw input of reality. Our maps are still maps, approximating the landscape of truth from the territories of the knowable, incomplete representational models that always leave more to map, more to fathom, because the selfsame forces that made the universe also made the figuring instrument with which we try to comprehend it. And lastly, number 13, in any bond of depth and significance, forgive, 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 and then forgive again. The richest relationships are lifeboats, but they are also submarines that descend to the darkest and most disquieting places, to the unfathomed trenches of the soul where our deepest shames and foibles and vulnerabilities live, where we are less than we would like to be. Forgiveness is the alchemy by which the shame transforms into the honor and privilege of being invited into another's darkness and having them witness your own with the undimmed light of love, of sympathy, of non-judgmental understanding. Forgiveness is the engine of buoyancy that keeps the submarine rising again and again toward the light so that it may become a lifeboat once more. Ah, so good, right? Thank you, Maria Popova, for your wisdom. I really love that idea of each of us being the custodian of our integrity. When people say shit things about you and distort all kinds of crazy rumors about you, and despite even their personal experience with you as a person, it requires a lot of integrity to hold on to your sense of self and to not collapse under the weight of it. And integrity is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. It's kind of the only thing you can take with you to the grave, you know? Yeah, I love that. So check out brainpickings.org. She sends that newsletter out every Sunday, and there's also a shorter one that she sends out on Wednesdays called the Midweek Pick Me Up, and I love both of them. So this is the fourth installment in the miniseries that I was doing on the Los Angeles puppet people, and it's with Tim LAGASSE, who's a veteran puppeteer and has worked on Sesame Street, Dark Crystal, Blue's Clues, with the Muppets, the Chappelle Show, Between the Lions, and the brand new Apple TV show called The Helpsters. And here's a funny story about Tim is that I actually performed at his wedding 10 years ago in Brooklyn, New York. And so you know he has great taste and a great sense of humor if he and his wife hired me and Monkey to flip and strip for their friends and family at one of the most important days of their lives. So you know he is good people. And so without further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Tim LAGASSE. Okay, well, we're here with Tim LAGASSE in his amazing house. We've just been admiring all the taxidermy and collection of amazing things in this home. And we are here to talk about your long history in the puppet world. So
long, so very, very long.
So where should we begin? Where does it all start?
Oh, you want the origin story?
Yes.
Okay, I've gotten really good at telling it very short. I grew up loving the Muppets. I'm as old as Sesame Street. I was around when it first premiered. My mom put me in front of it, and just always a lifelong Muppet fan. When Muppet Show came out, it was my favorite show in the whole wide world. I was Muppet obsessed as a kid. Was in high school. I was doing theater and band and clowning and things like that. And I was going to high school near New Haven, Connecticut, and out the back window you could see Yale, and all the professors were like, "You're all going to go to Yale. You're all going to be lawyers and doctors." And I opened up a magazine, a Newsweek magazine, and there was an article about a school in Connecticut where people go to get a degree in puppet arts. Wow. And many people would graduate and work for the Muppets. And I was like, wait a minute. That's a job. That's a job I can go to college for. Yeah. That's a job and I can go work for the Muppets.
And in your own state.
And in my own state, so I got in-state tuition.
Amazing.
And in the state school, and I went home to tell my parents, and they were not very happy about it. But it was that moment when I read that article that I opened up. It felt like in that moment, like my life made sense.
Yeah.
It sounds weird. It sounds over dramatic. But in this moment, all of a sudden, like my shoulders, like the weight lifted off my shoulders, and I went, "That's what I want to do. This is really." I had like a passion finally in life, and I went, "This is what I think I might be good at this."
How old were you?
This was 15. I was 15. Okay. 15, maybe 16. And my whole life, when I used to go to the library, there was this one shelf in the library that was my favorite. It was the magic, origami, and puppet shelf. In the Dewey Decimal System, they're right next to each other. And I read all the magic books, I read all the puppet books, and I read all the origami books. I don't know why I was obsessed with it. I don't know, just took to it.
That's really interesting because those three elements are really part of puppetry. I mean, I really consider, even for what I do, I call it very often stage magic, which is just like kind of analog effects and tricks and surprises that happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, also it's you know, I think burlesque and theater and puppet theater all are, you have to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
All the arts are needed to do theater. Which is what we do in variety arts. You have to know all the arts. I had to, I have to learn, once I went to college, so I made my way to UConn and got a degree in puppetry, and there it's a theater degree, and you have to take all the acting classes and all the theater classes. Right. And I was taking painting and sewing and costuming and all these things you have to learn. You have to know all these things, plus puppet classes. Yeah. So graduated. Before I graduated, there was a separate program at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Waterford, Connecticut, and they wanted to start doing a puppetry conference during the summer. During the summer at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, there's like the cabaret conference, the playwrights conference, the producers conference, the directors conference, the musical theater conference. They should have a burlesque conference. I don't know why they don't. Conference? Yeah, have a cabaret conference there. And then they have a puppetry conference, and they always wanted a puppetry conference because Margot and Rufus Rose, who were marionettists, and they are famous for building and performing all the Howdy Doody marionettes. You might be too young for Howdy Doody. You may have heard the name. And it was the first kids puppet show on television, was the Roses, and they did it. And they lived in Waterford, and they would commute into New York every day and do the Howdy Doody show. And they studied they come from a long history of puppeteers in New York. Tony Sarg was famous, who's the puppeteer who invented the Macy's balloons. Wow. They worked for him, and so did Bill Baird, and they all kind of came out of that. And they cleaned this place up. There was this old barn in Waterford, and they came out and helped turn this into a theater school. So they felt they wanted to honor them and make a puppetry program. And the very first year, it was funded by Jim Henson, and it was the Muppet people coming to teach people how to perform Muppets and how to build Muppets. And you had to apply, and it's all I ever wanted. And I got in that summer, and I met some very influential people. And
this is before you graduated?
This is before I graduated. This is a year before I graduated. Summer 90, I think. And it was Marty Robinson and Kathy Mullen and Jane Henson and Pam Arciero and Richard Termini and a couple other Muppet people were there, and but also they accepted all these famous live puppeteers to this conference. There's like Paul Vincent Davis, who started the Brookline puppet show place, and Bob Brown, who did marionettes. You might know him. He did marionettes on the Fred Run when Mr. Rogers went to the Marionette Theater. That was Bob Brown, and there's all these puppeteers that I had heard of my whole life, and they all came. They all wanted to learn the Muppet style too, and a bunch of kids. We're all there too, and we spent the week, this really intense 10 days, learning how to perform on television, puppets for television, which is a whole different technique.
Explain how it's different.
You don't look up at your puppet. You watch a monitor. You see what the camera sees, and you perform to that. So you're watching what the audience sees while you perform, and you perform to camera. And the first thing, it's a motor skill you have to learn because it's not a mirror. Right. You're watching the actual picture. So up is up, down is down, forward is forward, back is back, but right is left and left is right. Right. So it takes you a good year of practicing to flip your brain till it becomes second nature. And that's the skill set you need to do to work as a puppeteer in television, mostly for the Muppets and the Jim Henson Company and Sesame Street or anybody like that. You have to have that skill set. It takes a year for you to get good at it. Wow. So luckily I had a year, and a friend of mine also took this class, and we left and went back to UConn, and every day after dinner I turned a camera on. Back then, cameras weren't so ubiquitous. We had to find a video camera and a little TV, and I had to put it on, we stacked it up on our dorm fridges, and every night we just turned on records and we lip synced and trained ourselves to be TV puppeteers. Wow. And then because of that, I met some people. Kathy Mullen was Moki Fraggle on Fraggle Rock, and she was Kira in The Dark Crystal, and she was a puppeteer on The Muppet Show. And we kind of hit it off, and she was shooting some pilots, and she's like, hey, Tim, you want to come help me shoot a pilot? So I got to work with her, and she's a masterful puppeteer, television puppeteer, and I learned immensely from her. And then she got a job doing this show for Nickelodeon called Allegra's Window. And they were short a puppeteer, and she said, hey, you should audition Tim LAGASSE. And Marty Robinson, who was my other professor, and Pam Marciero, who was my other professor that fateful summer, were on the show. And they auditioned me, and they liked what I did, and I got the part. And that was like how I started my TV career.
Okay, so when was that? Was this after college?
So it was a couple years after college. I graduated college, and I was just trying to make a living as a artist.
Yeah.
Didn't know how. I had built the Baba Booey puppet for Howard Stern while I was in school. Someone from
Wait, tell this story. How did this come about?
Well, no, it's kind of a non-story. The Howard Stern show Howard Stern really wanted to build a puppet of Baba Booey, and he started out as a puppeteer.
Really?
That's when he was still on WOR 9 out of New Jersey. He wasn't nationwide yet. He had a local TV show in New York. And they called the puppet lab. They said, I'm sure some producers said, how do we get a cheap puppet? And they found this puppet school in the Yellow Pages and called up. And I happened to be in the puppet lab at school.
Wow.
And I answered the phone like, hey, this is the Howard Stern show. And I was like, Howard Stern? So, I knew who that was. I used to listen to him all the time. And they're like, yeah, we need a puppet. I was like, yeah, I'll build it, sure, yeah. And just because the professor I was the only one in the lab. So like, well, I got lucky and I answered the phone and I went, yep, sure.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned just to say yes. Yep, I can do that. Yep. And then luckily I was working in a school puppet shop.
Yeah.
And had all the tools I needed and materials and they hired me to build a puppet. Though of course that was also, I don't know if you're a Howard Stern fan, you remember that Howard Stern shaved Baba Booey's mullet. And that was right while I was building the puppet. I was just finishing the puppet, and I put this mullet on the puppet. And the producer said, "Oh, by the way, we just shaved his head. We need a new hairstyle on him." And they sent me Polaroids. There was no internet back then. They sent me Polaroids of him, and I had to change his hair in a hurry before I sent it out. And to this day, people like that. That's like a point for certain people. Oh, you built the Baba. That's like for a certain group of people.
Funny.
That's like I get work because you built Baba Booey. Oh my god.
So what was the life of that puppet? How long did he use it?
There, I don't know if he still uses it, but it's still on the set. If you watch his show, there's clips of his show, it's still around. I don't know how often they use it, but it's still part of the show. Yeah. Do you know who Billy West is? He was the voice of Ren and Stimpy, and he used to be on Stern. He used to be just a guy in the back, one of the guys doing funny voices for Stern. And he and I did a gig together, and I was like, oh yeah, I used to listen to the show all the time. And, I built the Baba Booey puppet, and he was like, I love that puppet.
That's a high compliment.
I know. I said, can I quote you on that? He went, no, you can't quote me on that, but I did, yeah. Even though I just did.
Wait, so tell me some more about going to a puppet program in college, though, because that probably would have rearranged the course of my life as well.
Right? How does it not?
Yeah.
Well, luckily it was in-state tuition, and though I was not a great student, so I had to kind of go to a satellite campus. I couldn't get to the main campus. And my parents were like, "You're not going to be a puppeteer. You're going to be a graphic designer. That seems more stable." So my first year in college I was studying as a graphic designer, as an artist. I was taking all the art classes, which were not a waste. We're not a waste at all. But at the time, the main campus of the University of Connecticut was over full. There were so many kids living in Connecticut who wanted to go to the state school. They were very popular in the basketball at the time. I think they still might be. And they all wanted to go there, and they didn't have enough dorm space, so they had to kind of shuffle kids. They have also like satellite campuses all over the state, so I had to go to satellite campus. And then if you survive your first year, because you know how freshmen get culled from university, then you're invited to move to main campus. And I said, I want to go to main campus. And I got there, and my first day, I found the puppetry lab. I went down there and I met the professor, Frank Ballard, who created the program. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to change my major to puppetry. He was like, well, why? And we had a long discussion about it. He went, all right, here you go, just go. And my folks were not happy about that at all.
What was they were just concerned for your future financially? Or?
I understand their response because my mother actually wanted to go to art school, and my grandfather said, no, you'll be a teacher or a secretary. This was the 50s. He's like, no. And I understand that too. It's like, well, you want to have a good job. And he was working stiff. He worked really hard. And like, no. I want you to have a better job. And my dad grew up very poor, and he went to the Army so to pay for college and to become an engineer and got a really good job. And he's like, no. And he, you're not going to be an artist. You need to make money. My favorite to this day, he's still kind of incredulous. He's like, what? You have a job? They pay you for this? Like, yeah. Yeah, Dad, I have a car. I have insurance. I have a house now. I have a house.
Congratulations.
I know. Well, I know that everyone, I've been very, very fortunate, but at the time it consumed me. I wanted to do this. I thought I could make a living at it. And they were like, well, then you pay for it. So I paid for most of my schooling and worked my ass off just so I could do it.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was a state school, and it was if it was on modern prices for college, I never would have been able to do it. Mm-hmm. But I'm lucky I was in that pocket. So I went to main campus, and the puppetry program consists of, it's a theater program in the arts, and you have to take all of the basic theater classes, and you have to take a couple of the acting classes. You have to take all of the design classes: costumes, sets, lights, script analysis, directing, theater history, and at the same time you also have to take puppetry classes. So every semester there's a new class, and they're all based on the 5 different forms of puppetry,
which are
shadow, hand, mask, rod puppets, and then marionettes is a graduate class. But luckily, when I first got to the University of Connecticut,
I thought that was harder than the others.
It's a lot harder. It takes a lot more finesse.
It's like a lot of
It's a hard. Well, you need to have played with a good marionette to make a good marionette, to understand the balance and the thing. And I know people who spend their lifetime learning to make masterful marionettes, and I built maybe 1 or 2 masterful marionettes. Other ones are crap. But my first show when I got to the University of Connecticut, also when you're a puppetry student, every other year. Frank would mount his own show, and it was always a large show, and it was only a kind of show that you can only kind of do at university. And when I got there, he had Parkinson's disease, so it was hard for him to teach puppetry when he's shaking constantly. But this was going to be his last show. He was going to retire, and we did HMS Pinafore, 120 puppets, 80 marionettes, all with historical, accurate 1/3 scale Victorian costumes.
Wow.
So in my first year, I didn't do any of the sculpting, but I had to learn to drape a costume. I barely could sew, and I had to learn how to drape a Victorian dress in muslin in 1/3 scale.
Oh my God.
I had to paint puppets, how to string a marionette, how to work with. We mostly did everything in this material called neoprene. We didn't carve wood; they were all built on. So how to pour and cast neoprene, how to string a marionette, and then we were all basically learning how to do marionettes while rehearsing for this show.
Wow.
And it was this giant, epic, beautiful show you can only do if you were in. There was 11 puppeteers and other members of the and we only toured once. We did it at the University of Connecticut for a month, and then we went to the 89 National Puppeteers of America National Festival at MIT.
Wow.
In Boston. We toured it there. We did it there, and I got to meet Jim Henson. It was 1989.
Oh my God. That sounds incredible, like blowing my mind. I mean, what an education.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where else you get an education like that.
No, it's incredible.
I kind of fell in it.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
I'm envious. It sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also am deeply influenced by the Muppets. It's why I'm in show business.
Right.
Yeah, completely the reason. So can you talk about meeting Jim Henson? What happened?
Oh, I made a complete ass of myself. I made a complete and utter ass of myself. Oh, yeah. No, well, when you meet the guy who first delighted you your whole childhood, and then is the reason why you want to do what you do. Yeah. And you're not, and all of a sudden you walk into the cafeteria and there he is sitting by himself. No. And you're like, I'm going to go talk to him. And what do you say? What do you say to that person? That doesn't make you feel like an idiot. And I think when I went up to him, I got so nervous. I don't think I spoke English. I just remember and then I'm glad. And he, are you from, he saw my tag. Oh, you're from University of Connecticut. I'm sorry I missed Pinafore. I really wanted to see that. And I was like, but I'm, picture, yes. So we took a picture together, and he didn't say cheese. He said na. That was just what he said when he took a picture, and he shook my hand, and it was just so nice. And I know I made a zero impression on that man whatsoever. Really, People are like, you met Jim Henson? Like, oh, no, I embarrassed myself in front of Jim Henson. But then in the following years, when I graduated, when he died in 1990, and I graduated in 1991, and they created a little scholarship for a puppeteer with promise at the University of Connecticut that was called the Jim Henson Prize of Puppetry, and I was the first recipient.
Oh,
and I received it from Jane Henson, and I had met Jane in 1990 at the workshop, and we became very friendly. She gave me great advice. And
Can you share any of it?
What did she tell me that I could tell? Well, okay, this is one discussion with her is, I was trying to get work with the Muppets. And imagine every puppeteer wants to get work with them. And how do you break through? And I was working hard, and I was making a living not being on Sesame Street. At the time, Sesame Street was shooting almost six months a year. It's this huge job. And people wanted to hire puppeteers, but if you had the pedigree of being a Sesame Street puppeteer, you got the job. It's not about, that's the one thing about puppetry is it's not about what you look like. It's about your skill set. It's totally not about this. I can not my looks. I can grow any beard I want, and I can get as fat as I want, and like that. It's just about it's the equalizer. How good are you? Yeah. And then other things like, oh, well, they're on Sesame Street. They must be good. People don't. Oh, Sesame Street. So when Sesame Street was shooting, I got all this great work. I got all this great work at like Nickelodeon and other places that were not Sesame Street. And then when Sesame Street was on hiatus, like all the Sesame Street puppeteers got all the extra work.
Gotcha.
But when I was at University of Connecticut, I went there saying I want to be a Muppet puppeteer. And then I got an amazing education about the art of puppetry. And it started to remind me about other things I learned in those books as a kid about like marionettes and shadow puppets and rod puppets and things. And I realized that the Muppets are like rock and roll. It's a very tiny yet very popular part of a much larger art form. So when I would do stuff that was not working for the Muppets, I made an effort to not do fleece and ping pong balls. And that's what everybody wants.
Right.
Because that's that's what we want, Muppets. But I'm not the Muppets. I can't build a Muppet for you because I'm not the Muppets. How about something else? How about this? How about that? And for the past 29 years, I've been trying to sell people on not Muppets. Though I've been making a living working for the Muppets, but still, they can do the Muppets. Yeah. Everybody else should do something else. Look at all this other cool stuff we can do. And so I would get some of the Nickelodeon was open to it back in the day to doing kind of weirder stuff.
Yeah. Wait, so what was Jane Henson's advice about when you were trying to get in there? Like what was
she's like don't
bother.
She goes, do your thing. Do your thing. I said, yeah, but it'd be great to have a job too, Jane. Like, no, but you just don't do Muppets. Everyone's trying to do Muppets. You should do your own thing. And she encouraged me I kind of felt that, but you're kind of too scared to because it's really easy to make a living if you do the thing that everybody wants, and to convince people to do something new is scary.
Yeah.
To do your own art and put it out there. It's so easy to kind of like, look, I build Muppets. Everybody goes, oh, yeah, great. You do a great job. Everybody knows what that is. But to show them something they've never seen before and convince them that it's worth something, I'm sure you understand that. Yeah. It's a brave thing.
Well, it's the difference between being a real artist and whatever your craft is, right?
Right.
It's like.
Are you a crafter or are you an artist?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, but yeah. So she's like, yeah, go do your own thing. Do your own thing. Don't be a Muppet. Be something else. You move it. Art form forward, beyond, try new things. Was her encourage. She always encouraged me to do that.
So you started working. So by this point, you moved to New York. By the time you're working for like Nickelodeon and some of these other places,
I was working out of New York, but also living in the suburbs and kind of commuting in. It was actually cheaper to keep a workshop out in Connecticut than it was to build a workshop. But eventually, I moved. When I was getting a lot of work. In the '90s, was this bumper crop of puppet shows. There was Bear in the Big Blue House, Sesame Street, Between the Lions was another show, Allegra's Window in the early 90s. And we all and there was a lot of work for a lot. So a lot of puppeteers got really good because there was a lot of work. Always puppeteers working on Bear now. And then I was lucky enough to get on Between the Lions, which was a PBS show, which I loved. Did that for 10 years. And it was on PBS. It was a literacy show. It was to replace Electric Company. It was about these lions that ran a library. You're too old for it, probably. But it was one of the original creators of Electric Company, Chris Cerf, and Michael Frith designed all the puppets. And Michael Frith was the artistic director of Muppets for 30 years. He designed the Muppet Show. He designed Fraggle Rock, and this was him not working for Muppets, working for himself, designing these beautiful puppets, these beautiful lion puppets. And it all took place in this library. But when they did a book, they had like other segments, like on Sesame Street. You know, like the little short segments on the show. There's like a larger story, and then there's weird little commercials, but they're actually like segments about the letter W. And they were like, and we had a bunch of great puppeteers, and they were like, hey, why don't you go make a weird puppet film about the letter W and do it however you want. We'll write the script. So I was building little wooden marionettes, and I was doing paper cutout puppets and all these things, and a bunch of my other friends who'd also graduated from the University of Connecticut were also on this show. We call it the Yukon Mafia. Almost every puppet show's got a Yukon graduate on it.
That's the college, name of the college.
University of Connecticut.
Okay.
So we call it, Yukon is the short.
Gotcha.
UC, not the Yukon.
I
We always
was
confuse people with that. I know. So I had like my gang, and we all started building. And Kathy Mullins also a fan of doing weird puppets and building things, and she would build stuff, and we came up with these great little segments. So it was like this heyday of being able to do little tiny puppet movies and a Muppet style puppet show at the same time. So that afforded me to be able to move to New York, and I found a puppet artist that I fell in love with in New York named James Godwin. He ran the Elementals, and he and I shared a workshop together for 15 years. We decided we should share a space. We're both doing puppets, and let's try this. And I would always hire him anyways. He's such a brilliant artist too. I was hiring him anyways. Like, well, we should just share a space because I'm always going to need you on my projects. So let's just share the space together. So then I was in New York just doing that, and then doing that during the day, and then at night doing puppet slams, which was we kind of got invented in Rhode Island, and then we kind of became part of this variety night of puppetry.
I just went to one on Sunday.
Did you? One of the LA ones.
So it was fantastic. So tell me about the New York, tell me about the puppet slams there, and also kind of what the New York puppet scene is like, and maybe some of the differences.
Well, it was something. So back in the heyday in the 90s, there were always puppet shows and everybody was working. And there was a lot of puppet things kind of going on. So there was a lot of puppet artists. And, of course, we were all doing children's television during the day. And you really have to behave yourself. Yeah. You really, there's people telling you on the set, telling you all the time. Like, there's a segment where we had these monkeys on Between the Lions that we would just dress up whenever we needed, these monkey puppets for whatever we needed, and we needed the 2 security guards, and I was playing this bunny, and they all thought this bunny had stolen something, so the monkeys kind of grabbed, kind of caught him and brought him security monkeys, and I'm like, get your hands off me, you dirty apes! Like, nope, you can't say that. No, they're monkeys. They're 2 monkeys.
Why can't you say dirty apes?
It's just it's kind of, I got a long litany of the things, people that might be offended by it and things like that, and they can't call someone a dirty ape because then I'm modeling calling someone a name, and
I'll never work in children's TV.
You might, just not as Trixie.
People search away from.
But so during the day we would do this, and at night we would do these crazy shows where like really adult subjects. It was kind of this release to do these other do different kinds of puppets and there were some really just filthy puppet acts that happened that were just great. It was almost for ourselves, but they were always done with these kind of great craft because there were people who were building for the Muppets and building for us and like that. They were just building these beautiful puppets and doing these crazy acts that you would do once or twice. So this is this great community of puppeteers, and a lot of them have all kind of moved away because all of the puppetry work has kind of dried up, except for if you work for the Jim Henson Company. Sesame Street, which shoots for about 6 weeks a year. So it's not a real job anymore. It's not you can't just live off that job. You got to have other work, and luckily
what happened to Sesame Street? Why such a small schedule?
Well,
back internet.
Actually, it was Blue's Clues that ruined it for everybody. Blue's Clues figured out that don't die, we need you.
Sorry.
That you could show the same episode every day and kids would love it. So they would spend all week and they'd show the same episode Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then the next week they get a new episode, and everyone was like, "Why are we spending all this money making 100 episodes a year?" So actually, this is a great story. So they said we're going down to 25, and the head writer of Sesame Street said, "25. We're only doing 25 episodes." Okay. You tell me which letter of the alphabet I have to fire.
Good answer.
I love that story so much. And so we got 26. I got 26.
Okay.
But so they only shoot 26 episodes a year. They did a lot more. They shot a lot more extra things. And may do a special and stuff like that. And they did a lot this year for the 50th anniversary, which is happening right now, of Sesame Street. But yeah, it's just like they only need to shoot. Barney also only shoot 10 a year because you only need to do an episode of 10 to be eligible for an Emmy. Wow. Because people were watching those same, little kids like to watch the same thing over and over again. And also, your audience ages out. So you only need like 2 years of shows. And then those kids have moved on to another show, and there's a new crop of kids, as long as that programming is still appropriate,
right?
To rediscover those episodes.
Wow.
So you don't need to. So people have figured out we don't need to shoot 100 episodes a year anymore and now with streaming, it's getting even. It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
About we're all trying to figure out what television is going to be after November.
Yeah. But is there a place like what happens to the old episodes? Like, is there this sort of back catalog of stuff that could be available?
Well, Sesame Street's all the back catalog's on HBO. HBO has paid for the rights to have the back catalog.
All of it?
I think all of it. I think they've got all. Pretty sure they've got all of it. Well, actually, one of my favorite DVDs is called Sesame Street Old School, and it's all the old segments. Yeah. And most of it's the old segments they can't show anymore because they're no longer appropriate. There's actually a warning label on the DVD saying this is not for like modern children. I don't think it says it's not appropriate for children. Yeah. This is for nostalgia purposes, and it's all the great stuff that we love. And and you watch them, and they explain actually some of the things. Why you can't show. I think Whoopi Goldberg does a video at the beginning saying this is why you can't show this anymore, explaining some of the reasons why. And they just did a talk at the Museum of the Moving Image in New York, and they showed these segments, and they had one of the educators at Sesame Workshop come in and they would show an old segment and go, this is why we can't show this segment on TV anymore. Yeah. And here's another one. This is another one we can't show, and this is why we can't show it because curriculums change and information changes and social norms change. Yeah. The very first episode of Sesame Street, a little girl's walking by herself, and Gordon goes, "Hi, little girl. Welcome to Sesame Street. Can I show you around?" "Sure." And that encourages the little girl to walk around her own and walk up to a stranger and let him show her around. And that felt like an innocent and lovely thing back at the time. And now it's bad behavior modeling. Mm-hmm. But it's a great DVD set. It's like all the stuff that you want to see.
Yeah. So, when did you move to LA then? What was prompted that transition?
Well, New York was kind of drying up puppet-wise. I was working less and less and less. It was right after I got married, 2009. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I had just finished a series for Disney, and a couple of things. And I was also building for the shop that builds the Muppets, which was cool. Before I left New York, I got to build all the new Gonzos.
Wow.
Who gets to do that?
Amazing.
Oh, wait, me, I get to. And I worked on Fozzie Bear and a couple of things like that because those puppets, they don't last forever.
Wow.
They're all made out of materials that don't last forever. The foam rots. Yeah. So you have to remake them and clean them up. And we had to remake them for the movie that they did in 2011 to make them high definition ready.
Wow. How many do you have to have? Like how many Gonzos?
There's 2 puppets. And there's a throw version, and then there's a burnt up version, and then you have a couple different versions of Gonzo they've collected over the years. A couple of the older versions we've kept around, but they needed 2 fresh puppeteerable versions, so I made all the heads.
Wow.
And things like that. And then, all kind of that was like all the work was out here in LA. All the puppetry was happening out here in LA. It was just Sesame Street, and luckily I also build puppets, so I was actually working at the Creature Shop in New York, and there was some work, but it was not what it used to be. And then I got cast in a Disney show, and Disney was like, "We would like you to work as a local," which means, if you're a union and you live in New York and you get brought to California, if you're not working as a local, they have to put you up, give you a per diem, and get you a rental car. It's the rules. They said, but unless you agree to work local, they said, but we'll pay you to move.
Wow.
And my wife didn't love her job in New York, and I wasn't working as much as I wanted to, and I think I was just a little older than 40. It was about midlife crisis time. Like, this feels like a midlife crisis. Let's move to California. Someone's paying for it. Let's go to California. So Disney paid for my move.
Wow.
And I did a TV show for a year and a half for them. I worked really hard doing this sitcom-ish style show called Crash and Bernstein. Mm-hmm. It was only one puppet on the show. It was a kid whose family he only has sisters and a mom. He has no male influence in his life, and for his 12th birthday, they buy him a doll, and he gets really mad. He's like, "No, I don't want a girl thing. I want a boy thing." And the doll comes to life, and it basically has the id of a 12-year-old boy and the voice of a 40-year-old man. It's a really terrible voice he had. Because he was a cute puppet, and I went, well, the girls are supposed to hate him, right? Let's give him a really gross voice. So he talked like this the whole time. And that was super fun because it was it was the first non-educational show I ever did. Other than I did segments on Chappelle Show and a couple other comedy shows that were kind of for adults, but this was the first show that wasn't educational. So it was all about just being funny. And it was being written by all these sitcom guys who all had kids, and they wanted to write something that their kids could see instead of this adult. And so they were just writing this really funny stuff, and it was crazy what we were doing. And that went away because all TV shows go away. You can never do any TV show forever. We can't all be Sesame Street. And then it took me a while to get my stride here. And people to know that I live here and I was working here because all my contacts, I have very few LA contacts, but the Creature Shop was over here in Burbank, and they were needing the Jim Henson Creature Shop, and they were like, "Wait a minute, you used to build for us in New York, yeah? Do you want to build for us here in LA? I would love to." And the commute's great; it's a 10-minute drive. Don't get on a highway, and so they started hiring me over there to build, which was great because I got to build some amazing things I never would have built if I were in New York. I got to build the Dark Crystal. Amazing. I got to build the Skeksis for the Dark Crystal. I got to build, what else did I get to build? I got to build some crazy stuff over there. They were like, "Hi, kitten." They love that on a grander scale. And also most of the guys they have here in Los Angeles are creature builders.
Yeah.
And they needed to have us build more kind of like Muppety, fleecy, foamy, puppety, furry things. And so I go, oh, well, Tim did that for us in New York. So they were happy to have me here. So the guys who build creatures didn't have to build fleecy, furry, fluffy things. They want to build monsters. So that's fair. So
how does it work? Are you just freelance or like how? And so how often do they call you?
It's freelance. You never know. Like that Dark Crystal year was magic because they actually employed me for a full entire year, 40 hours a week. Yeah. It was strange to have this regular job, just building puppets every day, just going to work 9 to 5, building puppets. Yeah. There's like a blue collar puppet builder, which was great. It was such a great gig, and it was really exciting to be part of, and it was very challenging, and working with some materials I'd never worked with before. I learned a lot. Just I learn every day at this job.
Wait, so what was new for you that you were working with?
Foam latex. And then and fiberglass. I never worked that much with fiberglass and stuff like that. But I didn't have to do any of the casting and molding. It was more about the finished pieces that I had to put together. So new glues and new materials, and you always learn from other people. There's always people doing things that you don't know, and you're doing things that they don't know. And this is great collaboration. That's why I love. I mean, puppet building is a great collaboration. It's always puppetry is a great collaboration. It's all about collaborating, and I hate working by myself. I love working with groups of people. Right? I love having groups of people.
That's theater. That's like
right. Yes. Well, also it's better. The more people, it's better. You've got people checking you and adding ideas, and it just grows. Just by yourself, growing things by yourself is so hard and dead, and especially when you're used to doing live, right? You need that feedback to know what you're doing is good. Yeah. So what else did I build over there? Oh, so they were hiring me to build over there, and then I was in town, so you pick up little jobs here and there. And then they did that last Muppet series. They did the Muppets. It was that sitcom we did about 4 years ago, and I got to work on that. Amazing. I know. I got to work on a Muppet show. Yeah. And the thing is, like a lot of the guys who do those characters now are guys I kind of came up with. Like Peter Lentz and Matt Vogel, who are brilliant puppeteers, and Eric Jacobson. We all did kind of pilots and other puppet shows together back in the day. And now they're the Muppets, and they're like, "Oh, Tim's here. Tim, come play." So I right hand. I assistant puppeteer for all of them. So I've done on that. And then I was playing piano for Dr. Teeth and for Ralph the dog.
Oh my god!
Right? So much fun. I walked in the first day, and Bill Beretta, the puppet captain, is like, "Do you play piano?" I said, "I do play piano." He's like, "Oh, good, you're with me." And I survived a day. I did good work for him, so he kept asking me to come back, and so I got to do I've been getting to do some really, really cool stuff with the Muppets. I got to play banjo for Kermit on a TV show, and if we could dial up 10-year-old Tim,
yes,
and tell him a story, his head would explode. He would pass out. He would just totally pass out. I have been doing nothing but just I've been knocking off my 12-year-old bucket list. That's what my whole life.
This is amazing to hear, though. I mean, what a satisfying life you've had in so many ways.
I'm very lucky. I'm never gonna get rich, but I am the happiest man alive.
Well, it depends how you define rich, I guess. That's the thing,
that's
right?
true. Thank you. Yes, you're right. Thank God you're here, Frizzy.
You have such a rich life. I mean, these stories are incredible. I'm deeply inspired.
I just got, I was lucky that I decided what I wanted to be early enough in life, and the tools that I needed to do this kind of almost fell into my lap. But I think that happens once you make that decision. Once you make a very specific decision about who you want to be and what you want to be, it's easier to find those things because now you have a focus. You're not looking at the whole world like, what am I going to do? You're like, oh, I'm looking at this one thing. What do I need to do for this one thing? Luckily, that thing was in Connecticut.
And luckily, your thing included about mastering 12 other things, so you'll never be bored.
No, I'll never be bored. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm always trying to, to do new things too.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky to do all these other weird things you get to do in Hollywood.
Yeah. So, and what about like writing your own stuff? Do you have any time for writing your own material while you're working for all these other companies?
Always, constantly. I'm always constantly, but I have too many things that I want to build. I'll show you my weird shop in my weird office. But I'm always like half building things. I'm starting things and I have ideas and things like that. And the other thing is I want to keep my hand in doing live. So I'm always writing live acts, and my live acts back in the day when we were doing puppet slams got really elaborate. I started building these little tiny puppet shows and putting video cameras on them and running these giant rigs and projecting things on the screen behind me with the little tiny puppets. Me and my buddy Nappy would do all this little tiny puppet shows, and they were really difficult to travel with. They weren't practical. Traveling with all this equipment and stuff like that. It was like a cool thing we were doing, but it was just way too. And now I'm getting like simpler and simpler and simpler. My thesis in puppet school was a whole puppet show done with bare hands. Wow. I didn't have to build one puppet. It was all just bare hand puppet. Yeah. Well, it's a teaching technique. Yeah. So in hand puppet class, you have to learn the hand puppet rules, and before they give you a hand puppet, you have to do all those rules with your bare hand. So you have to do it's called hand mime, and you do a whole performance you do a whole show with just your two hands. It was like we all had every week we had to do like a new puppet show every week in the class. So when you're in hand puppet class, you do a hand show, you do a hand mime piece, and then you do a piece with eyeballs, and then you do a piece with a puppet, and then you build something, and you learn about different styles within that style, and you have to build an example of each one and do a show. So every other week you had to do a short skit based on that style that you learned the week before, or at least build a puppet sometimes, like build a successful puppet in this style. So I was used to kind of doing short form in school, but I had done this whole show, and I remembered, I was like, oh God, I love doing this show. And I did a whole half-hour show of bare hand. My teacher told me it would be too boring. It's gonna be boring. Don't do it. But I did it. And
what was the story?
It was a variety half hour called A Show of Hands, and it was about the short segments. It was, and it was like 8 short puppet segments that were all just done with bare hands, and some of them were just kind of like puppet style, like above a playboard, and other of them we did check black. It was like a curtain of light, and we were all wearing black, and our hands were kind of just floating in space, making shapes and dancing and moving. And I did it was a lot of things done to music, no talking. It was fun. I won. I received a UNIMA, Union Internationale de la Marionnette, award for excellence in puppetry for it. Wow. I know. Amazing. Weird. I was just weird. Yeah.
Do you still do? I mean, do you bust that act out every now and then?
That's what you call your party trick.
Yeah.
So if I have, I like to do it as a party trick. I've done it in a couple of slams, but I kind of show up like I have not planned. Oh, quick, who's got a tablecloth or something? All right, and I get 2 people on stage to make a puppet stage for me. Yeah. Just like, here, you stand here and hold this, and you stand here and hold this, or someone's coat, and I have them hold it up, and I go, okay, and then I have a little bit of music on my iPhone. Here, play this track. And then they come in, and I do this little piece I've just been doing forever. It's just my 2 hands do a little short thing. But now I've been doing a hand shadow act. I've always wanted to do one. I've been practicing my whole life, and I finally kind of came up with this crazy act. And I did it a couple slams here, and I got to go to the national slam with it, and I've gone around. I'm actually trying to get booked at the Magic Castle doing it. Oh my God! I think they would eat it up, but I'm a member. But still, I'm not. I don't have a good video of it. I've done it in a couple places, but I don't have.
So through your puppetry, you get to be a member of Magic Castle?
I did magic to pay for puppet school.
No, oh wait. Okay, so you skipped a whole a whole segment where you mastered the magic section of the library shelf too.
I didn't.
Wait, do you have origami awards as well?
I have no. I never got great at origami. I never got. It helped understanding structure. I was just something.
I mean, in a way, you have because that's like a lot of sewing and like thinking about building things, right? It's folding things.
Folding things. But I did. So I always did magic. I was a huge fan of magic, and then and some guys in high school, there was like a little magic club. We would get together and do magic together. And then I was trying to pay for puppet school, and I'd been fired from the record store for doing magic. They thought there was someone was stealing from the till, and they thought it must be me because I was the guy who did sleight of hand. So one day, my mom handed me a newspaper article, and it was a balloon delivery service. It said, "We're looking for clowns." And I was doing clown ministry. I went to a Catholic high school, and you had to do a certain amount of service points. And I had an English teacher who I loved, and he's like, "I'm starting a clown ministry club. You should join." I'm like, well, "Okay, what's this?" And they brought in real clowns. The teachers had to be clowns, and we would go to convalescent homes and children's hospitals and entertain. And it was and I built this weird puppet that I had in a box. I had like a fake arm illusion. That my fake arms holding the box, and my arms were in the box. And we'd go around, and I would do this puppet, and we'd entertain the kids and the old people. And it was an amazing experience. But I also got good at putting clown makeup on.
Yeah.
So I went to this balloon place in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and they were like, okay. So I did my act for them. Okay, you're going to be great doing birthday parties, but you can only do those on the weekends. If you want to make real money, you'll learn the singing telegram act in the bear suit.
Sucker. And you believe them? No.
I did. And actually, you know what?
You made a lot
I learned so much from doing that act. I learned so much because you have to walk into an office building, a school thing. You walk in anywhere, and all of a sudden you got to go and command a performance and set up a place and do a show and embarrass someone. That's the gig.
From 0 to 60.
When you're doing a singing telegram act, it's your job to embarrass the person who you're delivering the balloons for. So you come in with a giant bunch of balloons, and you cause a ruckus, and you stop everything, and you get everyone, and you tell bad bear jokes because you're in a bear suit, and you sing happy birthday, and you get everyone to cheer for the person, and you give them a hug, and you take photos, and you give them the balloons, and you get out, and you do the next delivery.
Yeah.
And you learn how to be entertaining quickly doing that.
Sink or swim.
Yes, exactly. I learned more from doing singing telegrams than I did in theater school.
That's hilarious.
But then on the weekends you would do birthday parties. This is a magic show. It's a kid magic show, so you can kind of get away with. You can really milk like 4 to 6 tricks.
Yeah.
You know, and because it's all about being silly. I find I'm really good at entertaining the 12 and unders. I can get them to blow snot out their nose laughing. I'm just good at it. It served me well later in life. So
Wait, so you had enough magic experience to get in? I mean, what's the deal with Magic Castle? Because you have to be a professional working magician, or like how?
You have to audition. So you don't necessarily have to be a working magician, but you have to show. If you're a magician member of the Magic Castle, you have the ability to perform anywhere. So you got to prove to them that you're not going to suck. Right? Because they want to maintain a reputation. They don't want people kind of like, So you got to have a certain competence to be a magician member of Magic Castle. And they make it really hard for you. They really set you up. They really test your, like, they're like, okay, you're going to come in and you're going to audition, but we're not going to laugh at your jokes. You're not going to be able to see it. We're not going to, you better impress us. They really set you up to make you nervous because that's the kind of pressure you have when you're performing. Yeah. They want the lay people to understand this is the kind of pressure you're going to be under. There's no do-overs. You got to be ready and sink or swim, so they really amp it up. And I've been performing for years, but I still got so nervous. Yeah. I got so nervous. Oh my God, I was totally sweating. I went down. There's like 10 people in the room, and they're all backlit. You can't see their faces. Though I'm very proud, because they said that we will not laugh at your jokes. And it was in the dark, and you couldn't see anybody. And I was doing this coin routine I always do, and I do this really, really stupid vanish that fools some people and other people kind of laugh at. And it's kind of you don't do it in a magic audition. It's that stupid. But I went, you guys all know the world's greatest coin vanish. No, you don't? Oh, let me show you. And I do it, and I do this vanish, and the guy in the back of the room goes, and I pointed at him, I went, I got you. You're not supposed to laugh. You are not supposed to. I said, if I don't get in, I'm going to make someone laugh. That was more important to me than getting in. But I passed the audition. I actually did my hand shadow act for my audition too. I did a coin trick, I did a card trick, and I did my hand shadow act, so I got to.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have to perform at the castle. I love doing magic, but I wanted to be a magician member so I could go.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I go every week.
You do? Oh, I'm so envious.
Wherever you want to go.
I want to go all the time because also I have like some secret ideas which I won't talk about here. I will talk about after the microphone is off. but of ideas of to get in myself doing my own stage magic.
Oh, sure.
So I love hearing this story because I really want like kind of the cabaret version of Magic Castle too. I'm like, why don't we have this like in other genres?
They're trying to do that. There's like was that Black Rabbit Rose or something like that? They have a cabaret space. They mostly do music there and occasionally do magic there. And it's not. I haven't been there. I hear it's small.
Yeah.
It's intimate. I hear it's intimate.
Yes.
But there's other people that were trying to make a more accessible Magic Castle in LA too.
I love it. So when you're, I mean, so what's your favorite thing to do? Like, do you find that you enjoy building or performing, or what part of this is actually your favorite?
All of it. Building puppets makes me a better puppeteer. Being a puppeteer makes me a better puppet builder. And I love the whole art form because also it's like that point of thinking about making a show. You need to make there's an idea for a show and you have to build something that's just to fit the show. You're not building a puppet that can do everything. You're building a puppet that needs to do this one specific thing. And that's part of the challenge. So being part of the whole holistic process of performing and building and writing and I mostly work in filmed puppetry. So I'm always, and being a DP and a director and an editor. I mean, because I was making these puppet films, I was editing them in my apartment in New York, and I got nominated for a single camera editing for an Emmy.
Wow.
Twice.
Oh my God.
So I had to learn how to edit to make these films. Because they just wanted me to deliver the films, because they're used to calling animation studios and go, here's a script, do whatever you want, and send us the finished cartoon.
Yeah.
So I had to send them a finished film. So I had to learn how to be a video editor.
That was for the Lion.
But between the lines and other things, so like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well now I'm more things I had to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Oh, how to be a DP, how to be an editor, how to all that, and that changes every day. The technology is every 5 minutes is a whole new thing you got to keep up with. What are you doing? Cat, what are you doing?
The cat just fell off the couch. That was really funny.
She is the clumsiest cat.
So, which final product are you the most satisfied by?
Oh God. Never. I'm never most satisfied by it. Never anything. No, it's a hard question. You're never completely satisfied with anything. No. I just did this show that premieres November 1st on Apple Plus, which is in New York. And I got to work with old friends that I missed. Marty Robinson is a fantastic puppeteer. He built the original Audrey 2 for a little shop off Broadway. He also plays Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street, and he's an extremely accomplished puppeteer and an old dear friend. And Stephanie DeBruzzo, who she and I did a show called Ubi back in the day, where there was our bare hands with eyeballs for Noggin, and she then became the lead in Avenue Q, the original lead in Avenue Q and Broadway, and she had a whole career. And we all kind of got back together to do this. We all got cast together on the show again. And this new woman, Ingrid Hansen from Canada, she was the new kid. Everybody else was like my friends in the room, and which was fantastic. I've been away for 7 years, and I have the gang back together. And it was created by this guy named Tim Mickione, and it is the weirdest, funniest thing I've ever worked on. I don't know if anyone's going to like it, right? So I know it's the newest thing I worked on, but I'm kind of it was really hard, and I'm kind of proud of it.
Wow, congratulations!
I haven't seen a finished episode yet. It's not up to me. I don't get the finishing work, but I can give me notes on edits for puppet purposes. But I think it's going to be really content-wise. I'm very pleased with.
When does it come out?
November 1st, when the Apple Plus premieres, when the new Apple channel. Yeah, this is the whole part of this whole new thing. Now everyone's got their own apps. So what is television now? What is filmed entertainment now, and how does it work? And is everyone going to rent all these channels, and who knows and what's going to happen? So this is our part of it. Yeah.
So can you talk to, because some of the other people that I've interviewed have mentioned that it feels like a puppet renaissance right now. And you have the longest career of the people that I've interviewed. So you have, you're the most experienced. You've been through many waves of it, So like, do you agree with that? And where do you think it's all going?
I think that there's a great demand for content because of all these channels. Netflix is producing shows like Mad, and Disney Plus is even though they have this enormous library, they're still creating new shows for their channel, and everyone's trying to have fresh new content. So everyone's grasping at straws. What is it? No one's had a puppet show in a while, so everyone is so right now, this year has been great for puppetry because people are taking risks because they need to. Back in the day there was 4 channels and they decided what was on. Now then there was cable and then they kind of tried it all out. Now there's this whole new renaissance of filmed television, filmed content. I don't even call it television. It's filmed content. So they're trying out puppet shows. Why not? Well, Crank Yankers just came back.
Yeah.
They suckered me into coming in for a week to build a talking butt, which was great. And so there's all of a sudden there's a lot of work, but it always comes in waves.
Do you know like who were the first people that really pioneered puppetry on television? I mean, because there was even people that preceded the Hensons, right? Yeah, give us a little bit of the history.
Well, the very first filmed puppet show was Howdy Doody. It was a live show, and it's nothing really to note other than its extreme popularity. It was so popular they actually invented the TV commercial for Howdy Doody. They decided, that they were going to put Howdy Doody advertising Wonder Bread. Like, we can have the puppet advertising. They were so hugely popular.
Wait, did he have like a whole world of other characters? Because I just know that he has the big cheeks and he has the blinky eyes and like.
There was like 6 or 7 other characters that were on the show, but it was mostly him. There was the weirdest thing was there was this Indian princess on the show, and it was an actress, and her name was like Princess like a spring, summer, winter, fall, and the actress died, and they built a puppet of her so she could continue on the show. Oh, I know, right? Immortalized as a puppet, but there was like this weird large-eared puppet. There's an older guy puppet, and there was a girl, and then she was the girl, and I don't remember that much about it. I went back and watched an episode or 2. Yeah. Terrible show. Terrible. But it was hugely popular, and it made puppets popular on television. And of course, back then, marionettes were huge. And Bill Baird was doing. Bill Baird did the segment from Sound of Music, the Goat Herd segment. That's how every modern people know Bill. But he was this amazing puppet artist and caricaturist and puppet builder. And he had a theater in New York on Barrow Street where he did live shows, and he was always on Broadway shows and did a lot of live theater. He was like the America's puppeteer back in the day, and he's the reason that Jim Henson does what he does. Jim Henson was influenced by Bill Baird. Wow. So it's like, and I'm a huge Bill Baird fan. Bill Baird actually wrote the best book on puppetry called The Art of the Puppet. It is a stunningly beautiful book. It is hard to get a hold of. You'll find it in most libraries. I have 2 copies, one that's still hermetically sealed from when I destroy the first copy, which is pretty close to being destroyed right now. I go through it all the time. But it was Howdy Doody was the first, and then Kukla, Fran, and Ollie was after that. But the thing about all the puppet shows that were on TV were they were live shows that were filmed. So the puppets were in a puppet theater on television. So they was filming, the Kukla, Fran, and Ollie was a little puppet stage, and Bert Tillstrom did those puppets. Any other show like that was like that. And then Jim Henson came around, and he wanted to do puppet shows.
But that was a big leap, right? Because wasn't that like from the 50s to what?
Jim started in the late 50s.
Did he?
Yeah, well, he was doing a show, late 50s, early 60s. We can pull the book in the other room to get the right date. I'm sure I'm screwing it up, but he was doing a show. He had met Jane in college in Maryland, and they started doing a little TV show. And they used to do a little TV show. It was like a 5-minute segment before the Huntley Brinkley Report. Oh. And that they were doing like these little 5-minute puppet shows, and they did their own thing. And his innovation was not putting puppets in a puppet theater, but using the frame of the camera as the puppet stage.
Wow.
And also watching the performance live, learning how to, because you can, that's what's going home. You should be performing to the picture. You're not just performing and have them capture it. You should have control and really help them perform to picture. So that was his innovation, and that was the innovation that now we still use to this day. Is film puppet show. Then it was but he also did a lot of segments on all the variety shows. Like he was on Ed Sullivan all the time, and he had a segment on Jimmy Dean. He had a puppet on Jimmy Dean. What kitten? This is my interview. It's not your interview. Thanks, Squeaks. That's Squeaks, everybody. Just someone's bored. Do you need to go outside, Squeaks? Oh, we're gonna scratch. That's good. That's great during a recording to scratch on the cardboard. Thank you so much, Squeaks. But then people kind of, and then Jim was it, and then everybody just started copying what Jim was doing.
So was his wife involved?
She taught him how to build puppets.
But even later, because I don't actually hear her name very much. Like
she kind of retired from the business to have kids. They had 5 kids. And she kind of raised the family, but she was always very involved. And the thing is that she was the one that always kind of trained the new puppeteers when they came in.
Really?
Because she also kind of helped Jim. She doesn't get the credit she deserves. She helped Jim come up with his puppet style. He was already a great artist and a doodler, and he was doing animation, and she helped him figure out how to put his style into puppetry, to build puppets. And she was also a fantastic artist. I actually got to build some puppets for her later in life based on her designs. But she also helped come up with this style of puppetry, that they were doing. And she would train the new puppeteers that came in. So she was like the first line of, if you got past Jane's workshop, maybe you would be good enough to be on the show, to work for them. So she, and she was one of my first Muppet teachers too. I have a great photo of me and Peter Lentz. Peter Lentz is a Muppet puppeteer right now. He does some of Jim's old characters, and he did Walter in the first movie, the Walter puppet, and he plays Ernie now, something like that. Wow. He was on Between the Lines with me together. He's a great puppeteer. He was him and me and Jane Henson. She's giving us notes. It's this great photo of us learning how to puppeteer with her.
So on some of those shows, I mean, do the puppeteers have any contribution to the script at all, or is it pretty separate?
We ad-lib a lot.
Okay.
But on children's television, there's always someone there telling you that your ad-lib's inappropriate. The outtake reels on these shows are outrageous. The Sesame Street one, which I can never show you. I don't know if I have a copy anymore, but we would always show them at the after, and they're just filthy because you have to kind of get it out of your system. Of course. But we ad lib a bunch, but we don't. There's writers, and especially for I mostly do educational television. Mostly puppets end up in educational television, and the scripts come in have been gone over because they have to be educationally correct and make sure the curriculum's there. But they kind of count on us to kind of add the funny. Because you gotta have to bury the curriculum. It's like kids can smell broccoli, so you gotta put a lot of cheese on it. So that when it gets on the floor, and that's the great thing about puppetry as opposed to animation, is that puppetry has this immediacy of performance. Yeah. Animation is so planned; every moment's planned and beautiful. But puppetry is wild and zany, and it's that tightrope walk of live. Even when you're shooting it, it's still that being in the moment, having that live energy to it. So things happen. And you get inspired in the moment, and you try things. But, of course, it's great. You're filming it, because if you do something that you can't do, you just always do it again. You only have to do it right once while the cameras are rolling. And, it works. So we're always adding and changing lines and stuff like that. Because also, people they're writing for curriculum, and you start saying things out loud, and you hear how weird it sounds. Yeah. And like, can we just change the sentence? Can I? Yeah. And sometimes you'll also give them alternate punchlines. You'll kind of go, give me 5 punchlines, and you'll try a bunch of stuff, and they'll pick one later. And so it's so there's that collaboration there, but we are not the writers. Right. We are coming in, and there are new scripts being written constantly, and to the point where you can't really memorize your lines. Wow. You're reading your lines. We stick our scripps to our monitors, and you're reading while you're performing because here's a new page. Your lines, keeping it fresh. And remember the thing you said yesterday? No, I read everything yesterday. I memorized nothing.
Well, in a way, that's better because then less work.
I guess.
Different distribution of the work.
Different distribution. That's fair to say.
Okay, I have 2 more questions.
Ask all the questions you like.
What would be your advice for anyone trying to bust into puppetry in this day and age? What is your advice?
Make your own stuff. Make your own stuff. Make something new and exciting and fresh, and do it every day.
That was your advice from.
From Jane. Do your own thing. Make something new. Make something new. Because also, my argument with people who make Muppets, I go, first of all, when people see it, do you know who's going to get credit for it? The Muppets, because they're going to think it's the Muppets, and they're not going to think it's you. Yeah. But also. Try something new. Try a new universe. Try a new thing. And of course, shows like Avenue Q, they went with Fleece because they were trying to invoke that warmth of those warm memories of Sesame Street, and then swearing, which we do all the time. But that was no shock to me. But people are like, a puppet swearing, But do your own thing, but do it every day. And if you want to work in the TV, do it every day. At home every day and work on your monitor skills and your acting skills and your comedy skills. So many people in town, they all go to take improv classes and they show up thinking they can be a puppeteer and they're gonna go, the people who do improv and puppetry at the same time are really impressive or or the puppetry's already become second nature to them. And you need to get your puppetry second nature, and working on camera second nature. There's no time to learn on the set. No one's got time. We're always in a hurry. You're always shooting. There's always the clock ticking. Time is money, and you have to show up good.
Right.
And if you want to work, if you can show up and prove that you can walk in and be good, and be funny, and be a good actor, and have characters, no pressure.
Yeah.
Then you'll work. But there's so many people that they learn how to do it. And also, don't practice on your phone because that's a flipped mirror camera and that's cheating. You're not learning the right way to do it. I've met some puppeteers. Well, some people send in audition tapes and they always look amazing on their videos look amazing, and then you realize, oh, they've been watching it on a flipped monitor. No, and then they get to the set and they see a regular monitor with the regular picture and they can't work because it's not. It's just. Do
you like run through your computer or something? How do you practice?
Right now, I actually have a setup. I have a nice camera that I can actually send signal to my Wi-Fi's to my iPad.
Oh, cool.
So I can practice that way.
Right.
And I also have a monitor that it's got a bunch of different inputs from different cameras. But I even told people, if you don't have the money, go buy a security camera and a cheap LCD screen. You can get out of there for under $100.
Wow.
Because it's all about having the camera up there and then a monitor that's not flipped and practicing. Yeah, you can't do it with your phone. And it's hard to record that, I know. Who's calling?
Yeah.
But you know who I want to talk to. Yeah, no, I don't even know that number. There you go. You need to practice with a regular monitor, and you got to find a setup. And that's part of your process is finding something that can show you have a good picture, and you can record and see a not flipped video. There's no app yet. There's the phones and the iPads don't talk to each other really good enough yet. We keep trying to look for solutions for ourselves because they always want to do like social media stuff, and they always walk up to you with an iPhone and go, "We're going to record you," and like, I need to see it. Can we hook that up? And there's workarounds and trying to find. So what we end up doing is like filming it on a regular camera and then transferring it to someone's phone to upload it. And nothing's easy.
No.
Nothing's ever easy.
Okay, so the last question is twofold, and all right, I guess it's just two questions, really.
Okay, so this is a penultimate question.
Well, it's kind of like, what is your hope for, the future, but both for yourself and for the world of puppetry, like the art of it. And, when I ask about yourself, it's also like, what is left on your bucket list for your 10-year-old self? And like, and so it's both personal and your sort of vision and hope for the art form.
What was the first one? The first
Personal.
one. What do I want from puppetry? I want to see a return to good manipulation in puppetry. There's a kind of a modern take on puppetry where people kind of do it badly or they call it stylistically on purpose because it's funny, and there's no kind of concentration on good manipulation. There are these puppeteers that I know, like Philip Huber is an amazing marionettist, and his puppet comes on stage and you're mesmerized because it's alive. And then you see other marionettes come on stage and they're just kind of like, they're just like, they're flopping around, and people are like, oh, look, yeah, your puppet looks good, but when you make it move beautifully, it transcends itself. And there's a trend to kind of against that, and I want that to go away, and I want beautiful manipulation to come back. That's what I want for the art form. And I also want, because I think if we do that, we'll get more opportunities. Mm-hmm. I think right now, when you kind of do that kind of deconstructed style of puppetry, it becomes a joke, and it's a one punchline joke. That's it. The joke's over, and you're not going to be, oh yeah, we know what a puppet is. Because people call me and they go, okay, can you make me a puppet? Sure. What would you like the puppet of? Oh no, just a puppet. A puppet of what? Is it a wolf? Is it a garbage can? What is it? No, just like a Muppet. Oh, you want like a humanoid Muppet? Yeah, just a puppet. I'm like, yeah, I don't.
No.
I don't do this.
You're insulting me.
Yeah.
Get out of
But that's
here.
when people are like, well, I just want a puppet to be funny, and people love puppets, so we'll just make a puppet.
Yeah.
And there's no thought to what it is or the character. So I know when you come to me and you say that you haven't thought about your idea, you just think, oh, wouldn't a puppet be funny? And that's all you thought, and you called me. But what's on my bucket list? I want to do more weird puppetry and filmed in the film media. I keep saying on television, but I don't know what that means anymore. So let's say on television. You understand when I said that, right? Yeah. I want to do a really great kind of a variety puppet show. I want to do the Muppet Show. Because no one's doing the Muppet Show. And
I know, why?
Well, the Muppets won't do the Muppet Show.
Why?
Well, the best part about the Muppet Show was, the whole thing. But there's two different parts of the Muppet Show. There are the segments with the characters, with like Kermit, and Piggy, and Fozzie, and all those segments that they would do, and all the parodies. And then there were these weird variety bits that Jim would do, which was his bread and butter before he became Sesame Street and the Muppets. There's always weird variety, and to do that, you need to have a staff of people coming up with weird puppet things and building them. And, you know, Disney's already paid for Kermit, Piggy, Fozzie, and all those Muppets. And like, well, no, we want to use the puppet. We don't want to make new puppets. And I understand that. They invested in all these puppets. I do. And also because there's no one of those guys. All those guys now are just really good at doing those puppets. And they're not thinking about other types of puppetry and variety segments because they just want to spend time getting their characters on you know, doing fun things like, you know, doing General Hospital, you know, Veterinarian's Hospital and Pigs in Space and all those other segments that are just so great. So they don't need that variety thing. So I want to fill in that space. So they're doing the Muppet half of the Muppet Show. I want to do a show that's just the weird variety segments.
Yes.
Right?
And the gas, all the weird.
Right. Yes. And we do, or maybe even kind of a variety show that has puppets on it, but maybe not every segment's puppets. Everything has to be puppets. Let's do a weird, you know, bring in, you know, a crazy performance artists, or the like, or great musicians, or people. I fell in love as a child with variety artists. I grew up back in the dying age of variety shows, and I love weird ventriloquists and jugglers and magicians and guys with weird acts and stuff like that. That you have no. We went to the Magic Castle last night because they were doing Brookledge at the Magic Castle, which is Erica Larson is the daughter of the creators of the Magic Castle, and one of the creators, and Irene was her mom, who's the queen of the castle. And she does this show Brookledge in their home, but they have a theater in their house It's this amazing story. They bought this house from this family that owned the only magic store in LA back in the day, and had a theater in the back where they demonstrated the magic tricks. And they bought this house, and they've been doing this thing called Brookledge. It's an invited only, always celebrities show up, and they do a crazy like performance. And Erica's been running it for years and years and years. And I knew that if I went last night to see her show at the castle, that it wouldn't be just magicians, but it would just be a weird show and I was not.
Oh, you're killing me. It sounds incredible.
Puddle's Pity Party was there, who I love. Carl Herlinger, who's a friend of mine.
Is Puddle's here in LA now?
I think he tours.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he just tours.
Yeah.
But she always brings in amazing people, and she did a great, crazy show last night. Like, a variety show. No one's doing a good variety show. Nobody is. I want to do a crazy variety show.
Well, count me in. I'll be there.
That's my dream. That's my dream, is to do some kind of crazy, silly variety show that on the vein of the energy of the old Muppet Show.
Yeah. One of my favorite, when you were talking, I was just like replaying in my head that one episode with Rita Moreno, where she does like she does the Apache dance. You know, it was like that traditionally like very almost like violent. Like it looked like a man and woman, like it looked like sometimes that he was almost like beating her up or something. It was like a very traditional type of dance. And so like every other frame, it would be like she would be like throwing him off the camera, and like so it would go back and forth between someone being in a full body costume to it being a doll that she would just toss around.
Smack around. It was like the French. It was like the French street dancer thing. Yes. Yeah. Well,
one of my favorite.
Well, we could talk about this all day. I am also a terrible Muppet nerd, and I get into fights with people all the time about what's the best episode of the Muppet Show and the segments. I have three. Okay. Steve Martin episode, the Peter Sellers episode, and the Wally Bogue episode of the Muppet Show. The thing about the Steve Martin episode was the joke was Steve showed up and they went, "Oh, Steve, we're not doing a show tonight. I'm sorry." He called, "No, we're doing auditions." So there was no audience, there was no laugh track, and Steve kept coming on and doing variety acts, his crazy variety acts in between, and all the Muppets were auditioning, and the only laughter you hear on the show was the people in the studio laughing at him. It's an amazing, magical episode. Yeah. The Peter Sellers episode, because I also grew up as a giant Peter Sellers fan, and he's so weird on the show. He's so weird. He's even so weird on that show. And then the Wally Bogue episode, no one knows who Wally Bogue is. Wally Bogue was the magician juggler variety act in the Diamond Horseshoe Revue at Disneyland, and he did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows. He just did that show. He was like an old vaudevillian doing that, and they brought him on the Muppet Show to do his act with the Muppets. And he's doing his balloon twisting and doing jokes and like that, and all the stuff he would just do in that show. It was like a great record of him in his heyday doing all of his acts from that show, and it felt right on the Muppet Show because it was the only real true vaudevillian variety show on TV at the time. But at the end, they do this song where someone accidentally punches him in the mouth and he spits his teeth out for like a good 3 minutes. So he's got a mouthful of chiclets. And it's on. If you watch this episode of the Muppet Show, you watch this episode and you watch him, and there's like this music kind of going on, and he's just spitting his teeth out and he keeps spitting it out, and I watch it every time, and I'm crying laughing. And this is a guy who's done this on stage for 1,000 performances, and he knows every beat, and there's no audience, and he knows how long to wait till the next tooth and the next tooth, and how this tooth goes, and it has a variety going on. There's a lesson in something watching this over and over and over again, and it's just like, oh my God, he's so good, and he's just spitting his teeth out, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I always make people watch it. Like, oh, you got to watch the Wally Bug episode because I have a bootleg copy because they never released it. Any of the releases they ever did, they never released the Wally Bug episode. And when I was working at my first Henson job was a show called.
Wait, why wasn't it released?
It's just because no one knows who Wally Bug is. When they would do all these compilations like that, they would do all the celebrities that you knew, and they wouldn't put Wally Bug on there. And I was doing my first my Henson show I got to puppeteer on was a show called The Webulous World of Dr. Seuss. They made it for Nickelodeon. Yeah. And we were shooting it in the Carriage House, which is a famous building in New York that was the first building that Jim Henson bought. It's an old carriage house, and they had a workshop in there, and they have a TV studio in there, and Jane had her offices, and they have an apartment upstairs. And they still own it. It's this magical building. And we were shooting this TV show in this little stage, upstairs was all the archives of all there's like this giant tape room, and there were all the tapes of everything the Muppets had ever done, Jim Henson Company had ever done. And I became good friends with the guy who ran the tape room. And I was like, no one I really want. It's like, I've never been able to find it. This is like the early mid-90s. And I was like, I've never been able to find a copy of the Wally Bug episode. Like, I could maybe make you a copy.
Oh my God.
But, I was like, well, what do you need? It's like, I really want a puppet. So I made him a puppet, and he gave me a VHS copy, which I've since transferred to DVD because I just knew the VHS was going to disintegrate, and I've got this one episode.
Amazing.
And I teach a class every once in a while at the university at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, the kind of the place that gave me my career, I believe. So I get back, and they have the puppetry conference every year, and I teach a class on filmed puppetry, how to make puppet films. Me and Marty Robinson teach it, and I always show examples of amazing. Yeah. Puppetry, like this is what puppet films should be. I have all these little things, and here's the Wally Bug episode of Muppet Show. Oh, you're not gonna learn anything from this. Yeah, you just need to one night when we're all tired. Like, you guys need a break. We're all gonna watch the Wally Bug episode of the Muppet Show. It's the best one.
Yeah, you're like, I'm gonna blow your mind right now.
You've never seen this. You've never seen this.
Oh my God. Well, I feel like I've cried my eyeliner off just like smiling so hard, and so many great memories also coming up for me, and just really fascinating hearing about your whole career. I'm so grateful. And you are the culmination of my 4-part miniseries on the LA Puppet People.
4 parts.
Yeah.
So part 1 was Jared. It was the when Puppets Are Your Only Friends. Yeah, Alex and Jared.
And then the president of the LA Puppet Guild, Rachel Burston, right now.
Oh, Rachel Burston. Yes.
And then you. So I will have to be back in this theme. I had to limit it to 4 this time. I mean, obviously, I think I think the whole podcast could become about puppets if I don't limit myself.
Oh, right. Okay, that's fair.
Puppets have been the gateway drug for me, for my own performing career. That's how I got into performing, was also doing puppets.
Well, I love it. I mean, I came to see the show you did in your backyard, and what you did with how you explored a feather boa is someone who has a puppet mind.
Exactly. And a lot of my costuming, which, even in other acts and stuff, I do kind of effects in the costuming, and like I peel my finger like it's a banana and things like that. So I feel like the puppet mind thing is definitely accurate. And that's also what I call stage magic, just used through costume and props, but it's exploring all those things. So yeah. And I'm glad you came to that, because I've had your card literally on my desk. Which I was like, wait a minute. I was like, oh yeah.
Guy.
Which is why I contacted you. So I'm so glad this is an incredible finale to this little series. And I will definitely continue on. I hope you will introduce me to more puppet people, because obviously you guys are my people. Thank you so much for having me at your house. And I can't wait for the studio tour next.
Oh, that's right. I hope I cleaned. Did I clean? I think I cleaned. We'll find out in a minute.
We'll find out.
Good stuff, right? I really feel like the puppet people are my people. I think because they're so multi-talented, and in cabaret, it's kind of like that too. Cabaret is sort of a container for so many different disciplines. You know, there's like dance and singing and music and circus and puppetry, and it's kind of like a container for everything. And that's how puppetry is too. It's like they all have so many different skills, and there's just a place for everyone in it. I just really love that, and been really having a good time getting to know this community. And so I'll come back to interview some more puppet people later down the road. But like I said at the end, I am a little worried I could make the whole podcast just become derailed with my puppet obsession. So I'm going to try to get it back on track. And we're going to have some more exciting stuff coming up soon. So be sure to check out Tim on his website, timlagasse.com. That's TIMLAGASSE.com, or Puppet Tim on Instagram. And the Apple TV show, The Helpsters, just came out this week. So you can see his most recent work on that. And thank you to my sound wizard, Sean P. Finn, for smoothing out the audio lumps and making this thing so profesh. You can support this podcast any way that you'd like that involves sending money. There are many ways to do that, including Patreon or the mail, whatever way suits you best. There are so many amazing artists here in LA, and I'm really grateful to have this podcast as a reason to go out and meet them. So thank you to all the artists involved, too. You guys rock. Our song today is one of my favorite bands of all time from New York, Gato Loco. I love them so much, and I even worked with them on 2 of my best shows of all time. They wrote an original score, and they played live for the shows, Mumbo and Queen of Everything. They're just incredible. You can actually find some documentation of those shows on my website if you're ever curious, trixieLittle.com. They are friends and collaborators who I adore so much, and this is one of their songs called Caridad by the New York band Gato Loco. Until next time, whatever you do, make sure it's weird.